so a lot of units improved in Codex Space Marines and a lot of units got worse. In today's video though, I'm going to talk about some of the units that I think have most improved from the transition from the old Codex to the new. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel, where we're all about getting the most out of our miniatures on the tabletop. In this video we're talking about the most improved units in Codex Space Marines, so we're going to be focusing on the units that were already present in some sort of form rather than the new units that have been added to the book. I'm going to focus in particular on 4 Space Marine units and then talk about a few others that got improved in other minor ways. Let's jump straight into it. Starting out, I think that one of the biggest winners from the Codex were Dreadnoughts in general, with Permanent Duty Eternal. Although every single Dreadnought gained this, I think none of them really profited quite as much as the Redemptor, who's kind of been a mediocre okay unit for the majority of its existence, but with the further stacked buffs from this Codex, really might be coming into its own as a competitive unit. Its points haven't really significantly changed. It's 185 points with the Icarus rocket pod and the second Gatling cannon, down 1 point on this loadout from previously. By far the biggest buff is that Permanent Duty Eternal that it has, which I'm not going to lie, I was pretty surprised that they just made it onto its base datasheet, as it was already a very good stratagem and well worth paying a command point for. Duty Eternal really helps these Dreadnoughts soldier on. -1 damage really helps on big multi-wound models such as this 13 wound Redemptor. It's very helpful against big damage D6 weapons, but it comes into its own even more if you're fired at by damage 2 weapons such as autocannons or overcharged plasma, literally halving their efficiency. It makes it a bit more viable to do multiple Dreadnoughts rather than just have one and use Duty Eternal on that one. Next up, as per all the Codex Dreadnoughts, it is a core unit as well, which means it hasn't been hit by the other nerfs to vehicles, which left them unable to be affected by things like reroll auras from captains and lieutenants. It's pretty unique in a vehicle gun platform that you can have the rerolls on now, and it's also important for other buffs as well, such as Chaplain Listeners, or Might of Heroes from the Librarian, which can get you to be Toughness 8. It really helps Dreadnoughts be just that little bit better compared with other vehicle contemporaries. Next, its weapons all got buffed. The Heavy Onslaught Gatling Cannon is now Strength 6, and the regular one is now 8 shots, not 9 shots here, sorry that was a typo. It means with the anti-infantry build, you're looking at a massive 20 shots just out of the Gatling Cannons, never mind the Storm Bolters or the Icarus pod. The Macroplasma Incinerator is now more of a choice again, as it's flat damage 2, and it could be arguably better on this guy than the Repulsor, as he will have access to reroll ones from captains or his own Wisdom of the Ancients. He's better in melee against vehicles as well, with D3+3 damage on the Massive Fist, which will give you a reasonable shot at one-shotting things like Toughness 7 vehicles, with 10 or 11 wounds. The Icarus pod is a little bit better now. It's now no longer -1 to hit against ground targets, which makes it a bit of a more general purpose weapon. Though the Storm Bolters have been nerfed a little bit, you don't get Bolter Discipline on Dreadnoughts with them anymore, so they're a lot better at close range than long range. Finally, for another couple of minor changes, Wisdom of the Ancients has now become more flexible, though of course it only affects core units. You can now choose whether you want to reroll hit rolls or wound rolls, which can be pretty handy if you have a captain about, then you can reroll wound rolls of 1 as well. I think it actually really is quite good value to get lieutenant style rerolls for a couple of turns towards the start of the game for just a command point each turn. Finally, his explosion has become a little bit more deadly, which I'd say is a positive thing on the whole. You now only take D3 mortal wounds when you're nearby him, rather than the massive D6 that you had before. I'd say that this is probably better. As with a fairly slow, stompy unit, you might be more likely to blow up over your own troops than the enemy, particularly in the early game. Now you can't reroll with it with a command point, I'm happy for the slightly smaller bang when he blows up. Overall, I'd say that this guy is an enormous winner out of the new Codex, and I suspect to see them in game a lot more. My second choice for big winners are Terminators, gaining an additional wound with only a very tiny increase to their points cost. Your standard Terminators are now 38 points from 36 with a Storm Bolter and Power Fist, and Assault Terminators have fared even better, the Thunderhammer and Storm Shield version only 43 points from 42, and the Lightning Claw version remaining 33. Getting an entire extra wound of 2+ armor save on the table, for 2 points or less, is a big win for these. If you've not seen it already, I did a bit of a side-by-side math hammer comparison with Terminators, Aggressors and Assault Centurions, and now they're the most durable point for point in most situations. Not bad at all in 9th edition, where there's a lot of advantages to jumping onto midfield objectives and being prepared for a brutal counter-assault. Their war gear has also seen multiple different buffs. I'd say Power Fist going to flat damage 2 is an advantage, though honestly I think that Chain Fist still might be the way to go on these guys, even though they're random D3 damage now. AP -4 will really cut through enemy power armor, and the fact that they go to flat 3 against vehicles means they're exceptionally more powerful in that situation. The power sword on the Sergeant will be strength 5 now, which is nice, and lightning claws have also been buffed to be a lot more useful. Now each lightning claw gives you an additional attack, so those double lightning claw Terminators will be having a mighty 5 with shock assault. I'd say the teleport homer is a bit more useful as well. You can now redeploy them anywhere within your own deployment zone if you pay the 5 points. I'm honestly not sure how much it will be taken, but it could be really quite interesting and a powerful mobility option to have. Finally, for the Dark Angels specifically, Deathwing got a lot stronger. They basically have permanent transhuman physiology, not being able to be wounded on 3s or 2s anymore, and Grim Resolve got buffed for them as well, meaning that if they're stationary you'll get +1 to hit with all those power fists and things. I expect that we will certainly see more Deathwing Terminators on the table. There have been a couple of trade-offs for Terminators. They have lost access to transhuman physiology, that's Primaris only now I'm afraid, which I'm not going to lie is a bit of a blow, but it will mean that you don't have to spend the command points on that now and you can use them for something else. I'd also say that the Thunderhammer and Storm Shield change is a bit of a side grade. Thunderhammers are a bit worse than before at AP-2, and Storm Shields are now +1 save and 4+ invul save, which I would say is less useful than the 3+ invul. It will make them tougher against AP-1 damage though, and you are protecting more wounds of Terminator per Storm Shield, so their durability is still certainly increased in my book. Either way, I think that Terminators are looking very very nice in the new edition. Next up we have the humble Apothecary, who has become an incredible battle line asset to a Space Marine army. He's gone up in points a little bit at 75 from 55, but he's still very much worth it. I think he would probably be worth it alone, even for his basic special rule, which gives him a 6+ feel no pain type aura to infantry and bikes who are standing within 3 inches of him, which is just a massive durability multiplier on things like 2 wound or 3 wound infantry and stops them being killed very efficiently by flat damage 2 and flat damage 3 weapons. It's not even limited to core units as well, so he can apply that to things like Centurions and Invader ATVs, which is pretty much where you're going to get the most out of Mr. Apothecary. His healing ability is now an automatic D3 wounds, again useful on these increased wound profiles of Space Marines. Things like Tactical Marines going to 2 wounds means it might actually be useful on them now, and with things like Terminators and bikes going to 3 wounds, that'll come into play quite a lot more. As if that weren't all enough, he allows an excellent 1 command point stratagem called Combat Restoratives, which allows you to bring back 1 model in the squad, and it comes back at full wounds. Now command points wise, this is really worth it on any multi-wound model, whether it's a Terminator, Centurion, Attack Bike, Blade Guard Veteran and Eradicator. They're all absolutely worth it, but people have zeroed in on the Invader ATV as being a potentially pretty broken use of this mechanic, as it means that you can set one up with 8 wounds remaining for just 1 freaking command point. Enjoy that one while it lasts, because I'd be quite surprised if it survives a future FAQ and errata. Finally, if you really want to soup up your Apothecary to the max, then you can get a 15-point upgrade to make him a Chief Apothecary. This allows him to heal units twice, which pretty much guarantees that any injured models are getting back up to full wounds, even if they have 4 or so. And then if you give him the unique Warlord trait, then you get to use the Combat Restoratives, the one for setting up models again, for free. So he'll be putting 1 back up on the table per turn without any additional investment aside from being the Warlord. And also each time he uses his healing ability, it automatically heals 3 wounds. Realistically, I don't think you're going to be able to deploy all of that healing very efficiently, as you would have to heal multiple squads, but the free Combat Restoratives is absolutely amazing. I suspect that we'll see Apothecaries run in a lot of infantry-based Space Marine lists. They just add a crazy amount of value. Next, I wanted to talk briefly about the humble Attack Bike, which has really seen its fortunes turn around in the new Codex. It's gone from being arguably one of the worst units in the Space Marine decks, in my opinion, to being a really efficient source of firepower, just simply because of the multi-melter getting 2 shots, and also managing to retain the core keyword, where a lot of big heavy gun platforms managed to lose it. The attack bite remained 55 points for this doubling in firepower, and while it's not all that durable at 55 points for just 4 wounds, it does have a 2-shot multi-melter, and a permanent rapid-fire twin bolt gun due to bolter discipline. With melter weapons, these guys will be competing with Eradicators somewhat, who in terms of points for the amount of damage that they dish out will be a bit more efficient, but bear in mind that these guys are just so much faster than Eradicators, and you also get a bit of anti-infantry fire thrown in as well. I do think that they could certainly have a place, potentially as little fast harassment units for objective grabbing while still putting out decent firepower, and maybe making good use of reroll traits such as Master Artisans or the Salamander's rerolls, or potentially being fielded in a larger squad a bit more backfield and comboing very well with the Apothecary, who can give them a 6+ feel no pain, the healing and the revives. Just bouncing around in the midfield, throwing out a whole load of melter and bolter shots could be really frustrating for the opponent. Compared with those new Invader ATVs, they're not quite as tough point for point, but they do put out more damage. Combined with being a core unit, it also means that they can get the very nice rerolls from captains and lieutenants. I honestly wasn't expecting myself to be praising attack bikes after a new Space Marine Codex, but here we are. Finally, here are a few honourable mentions for most improved units, just a few more that I was strongly thinking about talking about a bit more fully. Assault Intercessors already being pretty efficient in terms of chainsword attacks, and now the only Space Marines who can fight twice with Honour the Chapter, and they also gain things like Power Fists and Thunderhammers on the Sergeant, making them a bit more of a well-rounded assault unit. They were already pretty usable before, but now they're even more so in my opinion. Librarians I think have a lot more point of being included in a Space Marine list, mainly due to the Psychic Fortress 5+ Invul save bubble, which could mean that they're quite a good include in a battle line, blunting the efficiency of high AP weapons against your 3+ armoured safe Marines. It works on vehicles and bikes and things as well, so if you are doing something like an advancing Intercessor gun line, you could have them all have a 5+ Invul save and also a 6+ Feel No Pain from the Chief Apothecary, really making them very hard to remove in Ds. Next up we have Eradicators, who were already excellent of course, but the Codex has for some reason made them even stronger. The heavy melter rifles might make sense in some armies such as Ultramarines when you can move and shoot for no penalty, but the one multi-melter per squad seems like pretty much an auto-include to me, adding to their already excellent per point damage output, and the transhuman physiology stratagem has got even cheaper on them, only costing 1 command point on small units. There's a definition of buffs to a unit that definitely did not need buffs. Next we have Vanguard Veterans, which I think are quite an interesting unit now. Before I think they were just a little bit squishy for what they tended to do, but now they've got 2 wounds and those new Storm Shield rules, you could potentially have a very annoying squad of them with 2+ saves and 4+ invul saves at 2 wounds flying around the enemy deployment zone dealing out death with Thunderhammers. Could certainly be an interesting pick for armies such as Raven Guard and White Scars. Finally we come to Hellblasters, who basically just have buffs to their weapons that we already knew about, and are now I think are far more worth a consideration, particularly their assault and heavy plasma incinerators. On the overcharge, the assault version could put out 3 shots at strength 7 at AP -4, damage 2, which for 33 points really isn't all that bad firepower. Definitely needs a source of rerolls though, as we don't want them blowing themselves up all that regularly. So let me know what you think. Are you going to be including any of these units in your Space Marine battle line from now on? Or are there any other units that you're really excited to use after the new Codex? I will just say again that I wasn't including the new units in these are very much ones that already existed that have been improved in the decks. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where we'll certainly be keeping the Space Marine content coming over the next few weeks, or just check back later to hear more videos. If you've been enjoying all the content recently, then I'd just like to mention that the channel has a Patreon page, which is how I can afford to make quite so many videos quite so regularly. If you would like to help support and keep them coming, then the link is down in the video description below, and there are a few different rewards for members, such as seeing videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the channel's monthly prize giveaway with a chance to win some big model kits every single month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support the channel, then the link is down in the video description below. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.